Welcome to today's episode. I'm your host, Reed Stone. Alongside me is my co-host, Bob Foley, and our guest today below me is Mike Drak. Mike is an author, a public speaker, and a recognized authority on the non-financial aspects of retirement. After having spent 38 years in the financial services industry, Mike retired and personally faced what he called retirement shock. During this time, Mike found himself on a journey of self-discovery and authored 3 best-selling books on retirement: Victory Lap Retirement, Retirement Heaven or Hell, Which Will You Choose? And his recently released book is titled Retirement Lifestyle by Design, Redefining What Retirement Can Be. Mike is a senior contributor at boomingencore.com, and he also writes for humbledollar.com. He dedicates his time to helping other retirees, including clients of his wife's financial advisory business, design a fulfilling, meaningful retirement lifestyle for themselves. Welcome, Mike. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Reed.
So I wanted to start with the title of this episode is Retirement Shock. And so many people run into retirement shock and struggle in retirement. They don't know what's going on. They don't know how to get out of it. I know you wrote an article by that same title recently for Humble Dollar. And when you and I were talking about what we should talk about on this episode, we went back to this retirement shock. And because so many people responded to that article, it was such a huge success. So it definitely touched a nerve with people. So when you heard that so many people had responded to that, not only read the article, but actually added comments, and I know you've had to respond to a lot of these comments, were you surprised when you learned that this topic was so popular with readers?
I would say yes and no. I knew in my heart, based what I went through, how important it was. And I knew a lot of people would be impacted by retirement shock, but I didn't know to the extent, and I didn't know how damaging it could be to some people. Like, it takes years to get over if you're not careful, and it's equivalent to what we went through during the pandemic. People were getting hit by depression and high anxiety and high stress, and that's exactly what retirement shock is. And I was really surprised because being a banker all those years, my wife's an investment advisor, and we've helped thousands of people save up for retirement. But we never really thought about this, even though my father had suffered from retirement shock for at least a year, and he suffered a bad case. And I had a good friend die from it. He ended up drinking himself to death. And it was all because of retirement shock. But for whatever reason, it never stuck to me. It never sank in until I went through it. And maybe that would be a good little story to tell here about how it happened to me.
No, that would be a great story. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I love reliving it.
Well, you'll be able to help a lot of people because they'll relate to it. So come on, Michael.
No, but it's true. But you see, one day I got this phone call from my boss, and he said, "Mike, I'd like you to come over and help me review the profit plan." And I said, sure. And I drove over to his office. And when I got there, he said, "You know what? Why don't we go up to the boardroom? We'll have more room to work on it." And I thought that was kind of strange because my boss had a big office, and he had this large side table there that had lots of room that we normally worked at. And as I was walking up to the boardroom, I thought, do you think he could be packaging me off? That kind of spider sense kicked in. And sure enough, and when I walked in the boardroom, there was this young lady sitting there at the large table. And she was young enough to be my daughter. And she motioned for me to sit down from across from her, and I sat down. And I'll never forget this. My boss sat to the left of me. He sat so close, it was kind of uncomfortable. I'm going, why is he sitting so close? I don't know if he thought maybe I was going to jump out the window or I was going to ransack the place or whatnot. And then the process started. And I was just sitting there, kind of listening, but really not into it, because the truth is, I was planning on leaving anyways. The stress of the job was getting to me, these always increasing goals and demands and all those things, and the commute, and I wasn't having fun anymore. And I was in the process of leaving. I already told a few people I was leaving. So when they told me that, hey, we're going to give you severance, I was the luckiest guy in town. I was so happy. It was crazy inside, but I wouldn't show them that. I kind of just played the game, sat back, kept nodding my head. And at the end of the presentation, they said, are you feeling okay? And I said, well, really, I'm a little in shock by this. I'm feeling a little dizzy. And they said, maybe you should take the rest of the day off and go home. And I said, maybe you're right. And the first thing I did when I got in the car is I phoned my wife and I said, honey, we hit the lottery because they just gave me severance and I'm leaving this job and life's going to be wonderful. And it was for a couple of weeks. I was having a great time, just sitting around doing not much of anything, just taking it easy. But I remember one Monday morning, the shock started to kick in. And I was all alone. My wife was still working, so she had gone to work. All my friends were still working. And I remember sitting on the couch, trying to find something interesting to watch on TV. I got one of those big fancy TVs, like 500 stations, and I couldn't find anything to watch. And I was lonely. I wasn't getting phone calls like I used to at work, or emails coming in, or people asking me to help. And I was just miserable. And what was interesting was all the things that I used to love to do, I didn't feel like doing anymore. All I felt like was sitting back and moaning, feeling sorry about myself. And I started to get frustrated. And what really frustrated me was that no one could understand what I was going through. My wife didn't understand. She was pretty smart. My friends didn't understand. And because they automatically assumed, how could Mike be unhappy? Because he doesn't have to work anymore. And the reason I was happy was because I couldn't work anymore. And that always made me smile when I thought about that. And I struggled for a long time, just like my father did, until I could figure things out. And I was frustrated again because I went out and I got my hands on every retirement book I could, and I read them all. And they were pretty useless to me because they only dealt with the financial aspects of retirement. No one talked about what I was going through. No one talked about this feeling of loss and helplessness and, high anxiety. And until I could figure that out, I was going to have a problem. But eventually, I did. I was lucky. I did a lot of research on it. I read about a lot of the work that psychologists had done about a person's fundamental needs and whatnot. And it finally clicked in. I knew what was causing that to happen to me. And, it came down to these fundamental needs that we all have. There's 7 fundamental needs that we need to satisfy. We're born with these needs and they don't go away. We're stuck with them for a duration. And, there's needs such as security, financial security, needs of socialization, needs of accomplishment and achievement, a need of identity. Being identified as a retiree just drives me crazy because, I need more than that. I need to be something else, something more meaningful, in variety and things like that. And the only difference between people, which is interesting, is the relative strength of these needs. Some people will have needs that are stronger in certain areas than others. And this is how we can differentiate different types of retirees, right? Some people are comfort oriented. My mother was a comfort oriented retiree. She, once she left work behind, she never wanted to work again. She just wanted to live the simple life, hang out with her friends, just follow through on a basic routine. And that was happy, that made her happy. Living a lifestyle like that would drive me crazy because I need to do other things. I need to do interesting things. I need to be challenged. I need the sense of achievement and accomplishment in my life, or I'm going to have a problem. And then I realized that all these needs of mine were being satisfied through the work that I used to do, my bank job. That's how they were met. And when I left that job behind, until I could find another new source to satisfy these needs, I was going to be in trouble. And that's what I woke up to. And that was the most important discovery. And then it was just a matter, okay, now I know what I need in my life. How can I find ways to make that happen? And that's how
Mike, when that happened, did it happen like over a long period of time? Or was it something that something happened, some event or something happened, and all of a sudden it all came together for you?
No, it basically, what happened is I started to write these books. They were more therapeutic than anything. Yep. And that allowed me to try to figure these out and try to piece everything together. And I said, aha, okay, I'm starting to get it. I understand. Right. But it took, it took a lot of time and work to figure it out. Because just, taking this comfort route or, a lifestyle of leisure just doesn't work for people like me. It's, it's more damaging than anything, right?
No, it is. That's, when we take a look at the emotional, physical, mental, and social side of retirement, or just life, because that's what you're talking about. Really, that first step, the emotional side, that's the side that you first have to confront. And that's where a lot of people get stuck.
Oh, it's huge. And people, again, it's rarely talked about. If you talk to an advisor, the focus is on the money.
Right.
But then, and no one's prepping these, future retirees to say, okay, what kind of retiree are you? What are your needs are? How are you going to satisfy them in retirement when you're no longer working? And that's where, really the focus needs to be on. And that's why a lot of people end up suffering from it. And a lot, some people never do figure it out. And these are the people that are very successful in their careers. They have a lot of money. Really, there's no reason why they shouldn't be happy in retirement. Yes, they are unhappy, and bad things tend to happen, right? And that's what we want to avoid. And you hear so many stories like that. How many stories have you heard that people retire and within 6 months to a year they're dead, right?
Yeah. It happens nobody wants to retire.
Yeah, and that's the shock, and that's what happens. And stress is a killer, right? And it's funny, it happens to people without a lot of money, and it happens to people with a lot of money because they lose this driving purpose in their lives. And purpose is a key longevity driver.
Oh, there's no question about that. Now, so you did some writing, it was therapeutic. How did you develop your purpose then?
Well, it's funny. I was trying to figure out what to do, and then I bumped into this concept called Ikigai. I think I originally bumped into it by reading about the Blue Zones by Dan Buettner.
Oh yeah, sure.
And he talked to, he spoke about Ikigai for a period, and I said, okay, that concept makes a lot of sense to me, but there's some things missing. And one thing he never mentioned in his research was the importance of having financial security. I think that's very important because, I want to be able to sleep at night in retirement. I don't want to worry about running out of money and things like that. So I tried to figure out, okay, what's a process could I come up with that would satisfy, let's call it the 4 drivers of retirement: financial security, health, right? Finding purpose, and then relationships with family and friends are very important. These are all key longevity drivers. And I thought, okay, that makes sense. So that was in the first book. And then, it evolved from there. And then I bumped into this process, the Ikigai process, the chart with Ikigai on it, where they ask 4 different questions. And really, it really matches you up with the type of work that would be good for you to do in retirement. And I'm a big fan of part-time work. Now, it doesn't have to be paid work. It could be volunteer work too. But it's work that really feeds the soul and gives you purpose, and it hits all those fundamental needs. And I think a lot of people could benefit from that for sure.
Schedule is very important in people's lives. I mean, when you work for 40, 45 years straight, you have a definitive schedule. You have a certain rhythm that happens with your life. Then all of a sudden you go through retirement shock and the rhythm gets distorted tremendously.
Well, the structure is thrown out the window.
Exactly.
Because when you're working like for 44 years, you don't even think. Basically, you're just going, following the same routine, the same structure. The only difference is when, Saturday and Sunday hits, right?
Right.
But then in retirement, that's where you got to step back and say, okay, I need to put routine and structure back in my life. What is it going to look like? What do I need to do? And this is part of that process I talked about, because I went into the, different segments. One was work, and then one was health, and then I had to build structure around relationships and things like that, because I wanted to be all part of this thing. And yeah, you're designing a new lifestyle for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how did you redefine your relationships? That's very interesting.
Well, the relationships, it was interesting because when you're working most of your life and you're spending a lot of time at work like I did, you spend just as much time, if not more, with your work colleagues than you do with your family.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, just that's the way it works out.
Right.
But when you walk out that door, especially in the banking industry, you leave all those relationships behind. And many things you used to be able to talk to, you can't, because it's, private conversations with clients and confidentiality rules and stuff like that. So you lose a lot of things that you used to talk about, right? And all of a sudden you're left to yourself. And the worst thing you can do is just lean on your spouse to say, okay, you're my best friend now. And I'm going to follow you around and do whatever you do, because it will drive them crazy, right? And,
or even what happens is that you expect them to do everything you want to do.
sure.
You've got this tremendous need now.
Well, how do you spell gray divorce? Because that's an accelerator towards it. And that's a big thing now, is a lot of retirees are getting divorced, which is just crazy when you think about it. And it's because these people aren't adjusting, and they're not recognizing that. And this is the problem when you have two different types of retirees. So you could have a comfort oriented one and growth, right? Well, guess what? My wife wants to stick around the house and not do much, not take any risks, wants to stay in her comfort zone and watch the soaps in the afternoon and all that. And guess what? I want to travel the world. I want to see things. I want to experience things. I want to learn new things. I want to go out and do an Ironman and all that stuff. And they don't want anything to do with it. And that's how you have conflicts.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's an important piece of it too, is not only individually do we have these needs, but we need to talk to our spouse or significant other about what their needs are so that we understand those differences.
Exactly. And then you have to find ways to accommodate them.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if my wife came up to me and said, I want to go ballroom dancing, well, I don't have a problem with that. But sometimes I'm going to have to suck it up too and say, you know what, I have to work with her, and she gives in to me when I want to do my things. So, it's about accommodation and communication and understanding we have different needs and try to just help each other, right? But if you ignore them, or if you think you have the answer and they have to accommodate you, yeah, you're going to have a problem for sure.
No, one of the biggest problems that I see is that what starts to happen is because the spouse goes off to work still, or whatever their rhythm is. What starts to happen is the retiree tries to replace that, and many times what the replacement avenue is going out to lunch, and many times where they go out to lunch is a bar room. And many times what starts to happen is that female bartender becomes their therapist.
Very bad. Well, that's like Cheers, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And you see that a lot. And it's not good. No, you got to nip something like that in the bud. Plus, you got to watch out, because drinking is it will make you sick over time. It will catch up to you, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And I get nervous when I see people, they're golfing all the time, and they end up at the 19th hole and they spend a couple hours there, and it's not good. You need more than that. You have to watch your health. It's so important, and I'm talking mentally plus physically too. And you got to create new habits. new routines that will serve you well. And again, that's where I come back to where I'm a big fan of part-time work. I think it will keep you alive and happy and healthier than anything else, right? Provided it's work that you love to do. And I'm not saying you have to be paid for it. It could be volunteer work, but you get out there and do something, and it will help you with respect to relationships. As you know, you're out there with other people, you're socializing, you're working together. There's a lot of health benefits attached to it. And that's why I'm such a fan of it. But again, it's something we don't talk about. But I guarantee you, a lot of people are going to be working part-time in their later years, right? It's going to go that way because they're going to need to do something. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I had another question in my mind, Mike, but it slipped away. So I think one of the things I was going to ask you about too is activities. You had talked about this earlier, that the activities we used to look forward to in retirement, when we have more time to do them, all of a sudden those activities don't bring as much meaning or satisfaction to us, whether it's golf or gardening or travel or whatever, because when we spend as much time doing it, it just doesn't, it isn't as meaningful to us.
No, it's true, because you know, you can't golf. Well, some people can, but most people can't golf every day. And really, these activities when we're working full time are escapes.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's something to look forward to get away from work. It's like going on all-inclusive vacation. You know, it's great to go for a week, but I don't know about you, but at the end of the week, I always want to get back to work.
Yeah.
It was fun for a while, but I needed to get back. I don't know why. It just made me feel better that I was back into doing something that, you know, I enjoyed at the time. And and that's the illusion, because we're always selling this leisure-based, you know, retirement. And everyone's saying that's the goal. That's what you got to shoot for. And I think that's a quick killer over time. It works for comfort oriented, but others it won't. It will not.
This thought process that every day is Saturday just really doesn't work.
No, that's a trap. And you know, we have to really, you know, go back and think it through. And really what you want to do is create like a Goldilocks retirement, where you got different pieces that fit together. So you can have a bit of leisure, a bit of play, a bit of work, right? And it's great if your work is your play, like it's even better then. And have these things fit together and balance time with our friends and relations, you know, family, and balance them out. Come up with this new structure and routine that works for us, right? That's what you want. But it takes time to put the pieces together, because really you have to go inside yourself and say, okay, how am I wired? What makes me tick? What makes me happy? A lot of people don't know that. And then it's like putting a puzzle together and say, I'm solving for me. I'm solving for my happiness. What will keep me happy and what will keep me healthy, right?
Absolutely.
So that's what I learned. And, you know, once I got it all together, it took me 3 books to do it. But I said, hey, I got a good handle on this thing. But it would have been so much easier if I had someone teach me before I actually transitioned to retirement. I could have saved myself a lot of time. Right?
And that's the key. That's, I think, the point that viewers should take away from this is a little bit of planning up front can prevent the retirement shock, the struggles, people being stuck for 6 months to 2 years, uncertain what retirement that's supposed to look so good, why it doesn't feel right to them. It just takes some planning up front, reading books, talking to other people, hiring a retirement coach, whatever it is that people need, they need to do something.
And whatever it takes, Reed, like you said,
yeah.
What disappoints me is the financial services industry isn't jumping on this hard enough, because, you know, their focus again is on the money and saving as much money as possible, because their theory is the more money you have, the better your retirement will be, which isn't true. You know, there's other elements to it that need to be talked about. And you would think the least they could do is at least give them a copy of a book, like the free book that we wrote, and say, here, read this book and let's talk about it. Because really, that's what the money's for. We're going to use it to support this lifestyle design specifically for you based on what your needs are. That's how it should work. But you need to do it before you actually retire. You need to start thinking about this thing. You got to decide, you know, exactly what kind of lifestyle you want to design and what's going to be involved in that lifestyle. Are you going to move somewhere else? Are you going to downsize or whatever, right? These are all things that need to be considered as part of the new improved planning process.
Yep. We often hear about fears and uncertainty in retirement from retirees. And a lot of times, again, it's the financial services industry that talks about these fears and concerns from a financial standpoint. But I think that clients have a lot of fears and uncertainty around just what life looks like in retirement, what it can look like in retirement. And if they do a little bit of this planning, that removes, I think, a lot of that fear and uncertainty and concern that people have. Because like you said, then if they can see what retirement can look like and they can see that their money can support what they want to do in retirement, that completely removes a lot of that fear and uncertainty, and people will spend their money more likely in retirement. We hear a lot about that too, where people are afraid to spend money because they can't reconcile what the money is supporting in,
yeah, you know,
in their future years.
You know, you made a very good point there. You have to understand what the money is for. What are you financing in retirement?
Yeah.
You only can do that after you designed your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you design it, you have to cost out that lifestyle, cost it down to the last penny. And then you go back to your planner and you say, you know what? I love this lifestyle. It's going to cost me $60,000 after tax to finance it. Do I have enough money? And, you know, hopefully the planner will come back and say, yes, you do. And it's the first time in your life you ever heard that you have enough. And when you hear it, it's music to your ears because you don't have to worry anymore. Say, I have enough to finance this lifestyle. This lifestyle is going to make me happy. You know, I'm there. And just go on and never worry about it again. When you're talking about people having trouble spending in retirement, that happens a lot. And it happens to me too, because I've always been a saver. So I have this, you know, these retirement savings, my stocks, and I hate selling them. I hate selling them because I kind of fallen in love with them, number one. And it just feels uncomfortable to, you know, to sell them after. That's always been my prime directive, is to save more, buy more. And so I struggle with it, and I understand numbers really well. And my wife's an advisor. She keeps hitting me over the head saying, no, what are you worried about? You know, don't be cheap, right? And I always tell her I'm frugal, not cheap. But yeah, it's a struggle. But I tell you, because I'm working part-time in retirement, any cash flow coming in from that work, I don't think twice about spending it.
Well, the other thing is that we go from wealth accumulation to health appreciation.
Yeah.
And, you know, people all during their working lives, you know, they may have done some things about their health, but that's not number one on the hit parade. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're in retirement and you're in your 60s and 70s, and all of a sudden, you know, there's certain things that happen, and you really got to get serious about that health appreciation. Talk to us about some of that kind of stuff, Michael.
Well, I'm a big promoter of health and taking care of it. I believe that we all can get healthier. We can get, but it takes work, because normally what happens is we get on this kind of like decline trajectory. Every year we get a little slower, maybe a little heavier, until the inevitable happens. But I know, And, you know, through research and whatnot, a great book is Younger Next Year by Chris Crowley. It says if we take control and if we start getting back into the gym and in the swimming pool and we get our 10,000 steps in and we start eating properly, what we can get our health back and we can improve it. We can maintain that for a long time until basically almost until the end. That's the best case scenario. It's within our power. Longevity is impacted up to 80% by our daily lifestyle choices.
Oh, absolutely.
But they're hard because all of a sudden you got to say, well, I can't go have a beer with the boys, or I can only have one instead of three. You know, I got to eat healthy, so I can't eat the comfort food, get away from the potato chips and the, you know, the pastrami and all that stuff.
It's all about intake, Mike.
Well, yeah, but you know, those are things you got to be able to make those sacrifices because they're in your best interest. But we're talking habit change here, and that's hard too. But you know, it's so important because you can, you know, I'm not concerned about longevity. I'm concerned about healthy longevity. I want to be healthy enough to do the things I love to do for as long as I can. Because if I'm not, it doesn't matter how much money I have, I won't be able to spend it doing the things I like to do. So that's my focus. I spend a lot of time on it. I work out the minimum 2 hours a day. And yeah, I watch what I eat. I'm cutting down on the red meat. I'm really, you know, right now I'm not drinking at all. But when I go to Italy, I'm going to have a couple of glasses of wine because you got to live. But when
you're also a triathlete, aren't you, Mike?
Well, yes, I got into that. I'll tell you, it was really funny. Writing the books, I'm at my desk a lot. I put a lot of hours in. When I write, I get frustrated, and so I snack a lot. And then going through the pandemic on top of that, and I ended up putting 53 pounds on. I was borderline obese. I developed high blood pressure. I even had health problems with my shoulders because, you know, bad posture sitting in front of the computer. And one day I said, you know, I got to wake up. I got to reverse this because I talk about it all the time to people, and yet I'm not practicing what I preach. So I said, I got to do it, or, you know, something bad's going to happen to me. And so I got this crazy idea. I was going to sign up and do an Ironman, and over the course of 12 months. And that happened in 2022. So I hired a retirement coach, and I went and attempted Ironman Cozumel, and it's a great story that everyone can read at Booming Encore. But I got my health back, and I plan on going back in 2024 and giving it another shot to celebrate when I turn 70. But I'm proof of, you know, that it works. Blood pressure's down, weight's down. I got a lot more energy. Who else can go out and ride 100K on a bike, right? I can do, you know. But I couldn't do it before. I could tell you horror stories of all the training things that happened to me. But you see, you can do it, but you know, you have to have a why. And the why is, hey, I want to live as long as possible, be as healthy as possible. That's what you want, you know. And you know, so yeah, we're not talking about money so much. We're talking about life and quality of life.
Exactly.
It should be the focus that retirees have. And that's what we write about in the book, right? And so I'm so happy I did it. I should have never allowed myself to get into that hole, but I got out of it. And now I'm happier and healthier for it. So yeah.
How about legacy, Mike? What do you think your true legacy will be as part of your life?
Well, my legacy really is to help as many retirees as I can live their best lives. And I'm talking about how to live longer and healthier than most people. I want to help them avoid retirement shock and make some of the mistakes that I've made trying to figure things out and avoid wasting a lot of time. I don't want them just to fall into retirement. I want them to be prepared and have awareness for what they're facing. And that's why, I sat down with Reed and some other people, and we wrote this book, Longevity Lifestyle by Design. And we're giving it away for free to everyone to say, here's the things you need to know and understand and prepare for. And you're welcome. And it's just a question again of we want to help people.
That's great.
Yeah, and helping people really makes you feel good. It's another longevity driver, right? So, I got a big kick out of it. I love getting feedback from people when I get emails or things like that. It's really nice because you're having a positive impact on someone's life, right?
Right. Nothing like a little shot of some endorphins. Always helps.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes you really feel good. I think helping others is probably the best medicine you could ever have. And in retirement, we're in that position where we can do that. And it's important to take advantage of that, right? And the world needs a lot of help right now. Who's fooling who, right?
God, yes.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I see happening too, and I'd like to get both of your thoughts on this too, is there's a lot of information out there. And I think oftentimes what happens is people who are helping people plan for retirement, a lot of times they're good at telling people what to do, that you should do this, you should do that. But I think a lot of people need a little extra help than that. They need somebody to walk through the process with them. They need somebody to pose those questions to them. They just need the extra help. And that's one of the things that I really like about your last book, Mike, really all of your books, but the last one in particular is one of the things that we tried to do is help people walk through that process. Yes, they're reading the book, but they've got these experts walking through these chapters with them. They've got you who've gone through the process yourself. You dug yourself out of what was going on, what your struggles were. You figured out, what was causing it and how to really create a really fantastic retirement for yourself. So I think that's one of the things that I see happening, that somehow we need to get to that next step. And I'm really pointing this at all the different types of people who help, whether it's clients or employees, plan for retirement. There needs to be something more than just saying, here, you need to, watch what you eat, and you need to exercise, and you need to have friends and things like that. People want to know, well, how do I make that happen? So that's what I really like about the book that you put together and the workbook that we have. And in the book, there's even a chapter about why people should think about hiring a retirement coach. So some people need that person to walk with them. They need some accountability at times. So,
well, I look at a personal trainer equivalent to a retirement coach. Like, you want to get healthy, you get a personal trainer. I tell a lot of people, like, I encourage them to get back to the gym, start lifting weights. It's important because, you lose a lot of strength and everything as you get older, and you want to retain that as long as possible, prevent falls and things like that, and allow you to go traveling and carry suitcases. And one of the first things I say is hire a personal trainer. They'll teach you how to use the equipment so you won't get hurt, and they'll introduce you to a couple of good routines that you can follow. Same thing for a retirement coach. You're setting yourself up for the rest of your life, for your next 20, 30, 40 years, maybe, right? Mm-hmm. Why don't you take advantage of that? It's a small investment when you amortize it over the rest of your life. And this is where we have to change the kind of thinking. We need more good role models so people can look at them and say, wow, that makes sense. I want to be like that person. And what I find interesting is that, we wrote a great book, but look at the problem, the challenge we have spreading the news about the book, even though it's free. It's a big world. And how do you keep passing on to other people so it will spread? But, we're working on it. But yeah, this is a worldwide problem. Everyone in different countries are suffering from the same thing with respect to retirement shock and feeling lost and having trouble transitioning. And it's something that, we've come up with a solution that works. And now we just have to tell as many people as possible. And hopefully, advisors and planners will step up to the plate saying, at least say, here, download this book and have a look. And if you have any questions, come talk to me about it. At least it starts the conversation, right?
Right.
Well, not only that, but it also becomes a great retention tool
Oh,
uh,
for them, sure,
for
sure.
advisors, and that's one of their biggest motivators.
Yeah.
And it's the whole thing. What always strikes me is that when you talk to a financial advisor, and they basically say to you, how much money do you think you're going to need, and you have absolutely no idea. Because you don't know what the expenses really are. You know what your day-to-day expenses are today, but you don't know what they're going to be when you retire. So that's what it just makes a lot of sense that as part of their repertoire, and especially on the onboarding portion of their service, that they have somebody there that can help people sift through and decide what they want that lifestyle to look like.
Yeah.
And that's and that to me is that then you build a financial plan around that lifestyle that they've created, and you make sure that as they're creating that lifestyle, it's going to pivot from every now and then, and that they have some fungibility in there so that it can pivot.
No, you're completely correct. I would find, if I was a client of a financial advisor, I would find those to be the most meaningful conversations. I don't want to hear about returns and asset growth and all this stuff. Talk to me about my life. I want to tell you what I think. Tell me what other people are doing. Give me some direction so I don't make mistakes. And, I approach retirement the best way possible. That's what I want from them. We're seeing advisors, good advisors, step up and start doing it, but we need to see more. I've been patient with them because of the times we're going through right now with, the economy, inflation and whatnot. They have a lot of things pulling at them, but once that settles down, yeah, I expect to see this come more to the forefront for sure, because it's an important service. People are paying good fees for an advisor. Well, this is part of the value add, and it's an important part of the value add, right? And it allows them to differentiate themselves from other advisors out there. Right? It's a big differentiator.
Well, it is, and I think society is changing too.
Yeah.
I mean, we're leaving the relational side of things and going to more of a transactional side. But at the same time too, it's masculine dominated, but now feminism is starting to permeate pretty well too. So that sets up some pretty good conflict.
Well, no, the industry is changing, and change is good, right? But this is a important piece that's been missing, and the smart companies are going to incorporate it in some form, and more people are going to be talking about it. And I find we'll see a change in those retirement commercials. They show us, the happy couple on the beach or the golf course. We're going to see more commercial of people working part-time or buying a franchise. And they're going to, talk about how happy they are, right? There's nothing wrong with working part-time. It makes you feel good, provided you're doing work that you like to do, right? We all need purpose. And that's why I'm excited about these new school programs, helping people find purpose before they retire. I think it's golden. I wish they had them when I was around, right? I would have jumped on something like that for sure. Because that's the big piece that's missing is, what am I going to do next? Because you just can't stop if you're a growth-oriented retiree. You're not going to stop. You got to find something. And if you don't find something, you don't find a way of satisfying your fundamental needs, you're going to be in trouble, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what I learned. I just wish I learned it a lot sooner.
But you know what it did? It really helped to define your life purpose. So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's good overall, but I'm not a natural born writer. It was a struggle, but you know what, it was one of those things where people say, you should journal and things like, well, that was my journal, right? That's how I figured things out. And I came up with something that worked for me, right?
That's great. Read, back to you.
I think we'll end it right there, guys. I'm going to share this slide here for contact information. Let's see, got it on wrong. Well, I'll share the slide and I'll go down to here. That's what I'll do.
Oh, there's the seven fundamental needs. Yes. So the books, yeah, the key thing is for people listening to this podcast is if they want to download a copy of the book, just go to boomingencore.com and do that. And they can also download a copy of the workbook so they can help them figure out what type of retirement personality they are, which is key. And also at Booming Encore, there's a lot of interesting retirement articles, and you can learn from other retirees and what they're doing. And no, it's pretty good. So yeah, Bob, I'm pretty happy with my legacy, I guess, but it's not over yet.
No, you're still defining it. You're still defining it. You know, you always impress me as that swashbuckling, tyrant there. Trudging through the retirement the retirement ocean.
I'm always scared with some of the ideas I'll come up with next.
Right.
Okay,
Thanks
guys,
for joining
it's
us.
been a pleasure. Thank you very much. It was a great talk.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us on today's episode. We'll see you next time when we continue exploring retirement and longevity planning beyond the numbers.